Will Fitzmagic dazzle in the nation's capital? Can Chase Young and this sizzling defense avoid regression and smother opponents once again in 2021? In fact, could it be the offense rather than the defense that carries this team into back-to-back division championships? So let's hit the opening bell and preview the Washington football team.
Welcome, Kings, to this edition of the Not Your Daddy's sports betting podcast and live stream presented by SportfolioKings, the future of plus EV sports betting research, where we leverage fundamental handicapping, data science, and Wall Street-style portfolio management principles to help make you a sharper, more informed bettor.
It is preseason 2021. We're heading into training camp, just kicking off. And over the course of the summer, we're going to be diving into all 32 teams, previewing their 2021 season paths, reevaluating how they performed in 2020, then also providing our market expectations for you on a go-forward basis, providing you our preliminary analyses, some of our predictions as we head into week one. So let's talk some Washington football team football. So let's start off by looking back at 2020, set the foundation. And when there was very depressed expectations for Washington going in to 2020. So the estimated Vegas wins was just 5. They outperformed that, going 7-9 last year, winning the NFC East, which was, obviously one of the worst divisions in football. Many expect to be one of the worst in football again in 2021. Average margin of victory, positive, 0.4. Average cover, quite positive, in fact, plus almost 4 points. Realized strength of schedule, 8th. So it was a tough schedule last year. Still able to overcome a lot of, again, a kind of repeating theme within the NFC East for sure is injuries. And for Washington, those injuries were concentrated within the quarterback position, easily one of the most important positions in all of football. And nonetheless, we're still able to win a sufficient amount of games, go 9-7 against the spread, and make it into the playoffs. What are some of your thoughts from Washington last year?
Yeah, and I know not everyone can see the chart if you're listening to on the pod, but the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, the market was not high on Washington, and obviously, they went 3-4, but it seems like Washington, from last year's perspective, the market was not high on, and they had low expectations. They did not buy into them, and that's why there was value to be had as they got situated towards the middle of the season. Because I believe last year was Ron Rivera's first year, right? I'm not mistaken. Obviously yes. My timelines are off. So maybe it took the team a little while to get situated because they started with Haskins, giving him one more shot, and he failed miserably. And then they moved on once Alex Smith got healthy, and they put in Kyle Allen. He got hurt, so they really were trying to find themselves last year. And once they did, in a weak division, they reeled off 5 covers in a row. Obviously made the playoffs. Played actually the Bucs pretty well in the playoffs. The final score I think they covered too, but they played tough. The defense kept them in the game long enough that if they had any good offensive output, they might have been in that game to the very end and had a chance to pull the upset. So, I do think from a macro standpoint, as it stands today, Ron Rivera is the best head coach in this division, which does say a lot because we talk a lot about foundational kind of systemic pros and cons. And he's got a lot of personal respect from his team because of what he's gone through recently. So there's a lot of just positives that Ron Rivera brings to a team, I think. And so in his second year, I understand why Brett may be a little more bullish than I. my concern is still with this offense, so the defensive regression may come. But yeah, we'll get to that. But just from last year's expectations, once they got situated, Ron Rivera put on a great coaching foray, I guess you could call it. And with 4 different quarterbacks, kept his team together after going 1-5, and they ascended to capturing the division and playing tough in the playoffs with their 4th string quarterback. That is impressive. I don't know. You can't really spin it any other way. So,
but you don't seem sufficiently impressed, and
because I feel like the market
unjustified.
I feel like the market is like more excited about this year than I am.
No, but
maybe
but
I
again,
am the market.
I feel like you're glossing over
Talk me into
the
it.
real turmoil that this team went through the first half of the season, not just getting situated. Right, this team basically didn't have a quarterback. Best case scenario. All season. Okay, so the first half of the season, they had Dwayne Haskins as their starting quarterback, who, in my opinion, shouldn't even be in the league.
He's fighting for a third
starting for them.
He's fighting for a 3rd string QB position, I think, for the Steelers this offseason, by the way.
And it's only a matter of time before he's not in the league. He's a complete idiot. I mean, again, I think I mentioned in a previous pod, he doesn't just have a low football IQ. He has just a generally low IQ. Again, after various performances last season, going to a strip club after a loss, being pictured like not wearing a mask and things of this sort, and just bonehead decisions that clearly reflect that you're so out of touch, tone deaf, and are just contextually unaware that your decision making in life, much less on the field, is just so poor. And this is one of the reasons why he didn't even make it through the whole season on the team. Was cut, in like week 16 or 17.
That is an indictment, by the way. So all the ancillary stuff, maybe he's young, figuring stuff out, but the kind of nail in the coffin, kind of proving your thesis correct, is Ron Rivera, Mr. who started the preseason saying, I believe in Haskins. I want to give him a shot. I want to, give him the best opportunity, and he did. Ron Rivera, Mr., coming out of the doldrums of hell to prove everyone wrong and survive cancer, was like, get this kid the fuck out of here. Like that. No, and that's how toxic he was to the organization.
Yes,
that's an indictment.
And there was some broader franchise level, like senior level kind of commitment to Haskins over the first half of the season, to where, because even over the offseason and the preseason, Rivera was never, clearly did not buy into Haskins being their franchise quarterback, but there was some other kind of string pulling that says, nope, we got to give Haskins another chance. And he basically torpedoed their season the first half of the year. And then you bring in Alex Smith, who did not play well. He literally, all he did was just made sure that he wasn't going to be the reason, the quarterback position was not going to be the reason that they lost games anymore. So it was going to be, all right, can we just not turn the ball over? Can we run the ball? Can we just pass the ball sufficiently down the field? I mean, Alex Smith's average depth of target was one of the lowest in the entire league. He was very skittish. I mean, great. He came back from that, hideous injury a couple years back. And then in between that, of course, they had Kyle Allen for a little bit, and he did play well, but then he got injured as well. This constant kind of quarterback rotation over the course of the year. Like you mentioned, they played 4 different quarterbacks: Haskins, Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, Tyler Heinicke. And then again, Dwayne Haskins again showed up again in the latter half of the year because Kyle Allen was hurt, because Alex Smith got hurt. And he proceeded to lose them another few games at the end of the season. This team, I feel like, again, if Alex Smith would have just played the whole year, I think this team could have went 10-6 minimum. And therefore, now you're not just having a bad quarterback in Haskins. You're not having all right, I'm just not going to ruin the game for us at quarterback like Alex Smith. Now you have Fitzmagic, who can actually sling the ball, who can actually take advantage of Terry McLaurin streaking down the field, who can actually stretch the offense, that can provide space for someone like Antonio Gibson, who played awesome last year. And then he got hurt down the stretch of last season. So he missed some games there, and they were still able to overcome that. Just, we talked about all the things that teams like the Cowboys, the Eagles couldn't overcome. Washington had the resiliency to overcome a lot of these injuries. McLaurin, he missed like 3-4 games last year and was banged up even when he was playing. So they went through a lot of issues themselves. And then again, especially at the quarterback positions, of course.
Yeah.
But I think, again, Rivera instituted a strong culture. Scott Turner, first year as offensive coordinator for the team, showed a lot of upside. He showed his play calling could adapt to whoever was particularly calling the plays. Who was calling the plays at the helm in any given week. I'm extremely impressed with what Washington did last year and the moves that they've made over the course of this season, of the offseason, going into next year. I'm extremely bullish on this team, and I have a lot of conviction that they're going to win the division again in 2021.
Yeah, and I think we can get there in a couple more minutes. But real quick, to touch on last year, obviously I think the offense is going to improve just by having Fitzmagic and some more weapons, and Scott Turner having another year. So I don't think there's much to pull away from any kind of general stats from last year. As far as defense is concerned, though, obviously it was one of the best defenses in the league. Maybe you could argue the best defense. The red zone scoring was second in the NFL, which is really good. I mean, that, obviously you can hold people to field goals and, get turnovers and your own end type stuff is where you can really win games. Sack percentage was fourth. Obviously they have one of the best, front sevens in the NFL. And points was fifth. So, only gave up 21 points a game. And that to me is obviously probably going to stay around the same this season. So to your point, I don't really have a good bearish case against Washington. It's just, I'm just concerned that Fitzmagic is not magic when he's supposed to be magic, if that makes sense. In that, I was doing some additional reading, and does he actually fit this team and culture and scheme, or does he actually jar it, make it off balance because he's off balance? To me, he fit the Dolphins because they were the 1-win team that he was on, and then he's the starting quarterback, and he's showing the world that they can make it, the little brother showing the big brother, the Patriots, that they're better than them. Yay. That to me is Fitzmagic. It's reminiscent of when he was with the Bucks, when he came in for Winston, when Winston was out the first few weeks. And that's when Fitzmagic got coined. But that,
but I think
is that going to happen for 17 weeks? Because it never has. That's why he's played for 10 teams.
Maybe it doesn't. I think they have sufficient backups, first of all, because they still have Kyle Allen, still have Tyler Heinicke. So
sufficient,
even if they have somewhat of a rotating quarterback scheme, it's better than the rotating quarterback scheme
for sure.
of Haskins and Alex Smith.
Yeah, it's better.
And
you're right.
I think Fitzmagic does fit well into this offense. I think he is going to mesh much better with a play caller like Scott Turner than he did with a play caller like Chan Gailey for the Dolphins. Dolphins did not use a lot of play action, did not use a lot of pre-snap motion. Scott Turner does like to leverage those types of things. And Fitzmagic actually has put together some of his best numbers when they did use play action, when they did use pre-snap motion. The thing is, they just didn't call it a lot.
Yeah.
Washington did call that a lot more so, but they just didn't even have the quarterbacks who could necessarily take advantage of it to the same extent that someone like Fitzmagic could. And again, just being able to stretch the defense is going to help open up, being able to take advantage of, again, someone like Antonio Gibson.
And I agree with your points. All I'm saying with Fitzmagic is the fact that he is still called Fitzmagic, which is obviously a play on that Bucks when he wore the Deshaun Jackson chain and was ripping, 500 yards for a couple games. Yeah. Is we call him Fitzmagic because we still don't believe it. It was a joke at first, but now it's become the norm because it's still almost like we can't get over that this is happening. So I guess what we have to figure out and be clear on is who is Fitzpatrick? Is he Fitzmagic? Is that who he is? Is that like in his DNA like once or twice a year? Or is he the old Bills Fitzpatrick from like 2008 or whenever the hell he played for the Bills? Like, where is he really? Because even last year, Dolphins I know they were, they have young blood Tua and wanted to pass the reins, but they were looking for ways to get out of Fitzpatrick because they knew he wasn't the future, which I understand. But they had a chance to make the playoffs last year, and they still were like, let's give it to Tua. Let's give it to Tua. Is that
no? But they'd bring in Fitzmagic to basically close games
because Tua wasn't good, or it wasn't good enough in those spots. But the fact that you're in a playoff hunt and you're like, let's go away from the guy who gives us a better chance to win to go to Tua.
Because again, that was just broader.
But then did he play better because he excels in that kind of underdog, low expectation role, like we talked about on the Eagles pod? Because that is kind of true. It's kind of like psych eval of people that perform better when they're underestimated than when they're overestimated. And might that be part of Fitzpatrick's kind of cerebral makeup? Is like he's so smart and he's got enough arm talent that when he's not expected to do well, like that's when he's dangerous. But once he's the top dog, which this season he is, now the expectation is you lead the quarterback room. You know what to do every play. You can't just shoot from the hip because you're the guy. And again, there's a reason why he's played for 12 teams or whatever. I'm just wondering, is he actually the solution, or is this a little bit like Ron Rivera thinking like, well, we need someone, so let's get Fitzpatrick and hopefully it works for this year until we figure out what our long-term plan is. Which again, it might work with the defense. They're going to be a little bit better in offense no matter what this year. But
I mean, my bullish thesis is not dependent on Fitzmagic. So, like the fact that you're so focused on whether or not how his performance specifically is going to play out, not relevant. It's only a sliver, because if you put in Taylor Heinicke, I'm still bullish. If you put in Kyle Allen, I'm still bullish. Why? Because they're not Dwayne Haskins. Why? Because they're not Alex Smith. And they were still able to achieve what they were able to with those two quarterbacks playing 16 of the 17 or playing 15 of the 16 regular season games.
That's fair.
And I think even if the defense regresses, which you have to imagine it does just because these were some, blowout numbers last year. Fine. The defense regresses a bit. But the offense is not going to be 25th in points. It's not going to be 29th in giveaways. It's not going to be 24th in sack percentage. Because it's not Haskins throwing 3 picks a game
And Alex Smith
and getting
sacked.
sacked. Because again, he was not a mobile quarterback either, and just making poor decisions. And you're not Alex Smith, who's again a statue in the pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
And kind of again, his first look is a dump off.
I will say this: of the 4 teams in the NFC East, to your point, Washington is definitely the most cohesive, situated, not going to shoot themselves in the foot type team in this division, which in a bad division that does shoot themselves in the foot a lot is definitely a plus EV sign. So to your point, I get the bullish case for Washington in general. I'm just caveating in the preseason to see if I can dig into an angle that says, wait, let's pump the brakes here. But the more you talk about
that's totally fair. You definitely want to do that. I just don't see. Again, so who's got the best head coach? Would you say again in the East?
Well, Ron Rivera. I don't.
Best offensive coordinator.
Definitely probably between Scott Turner and that's to be determined with the Eagles.
So okay, a question mark. Like you have no idea.
You could
best
say
defense.
It's definitely Washington. Maybe Giants. I am actually more bearish on Giants defense than I am Washington's defense.
Mm-hmm. So. And then again, 1-2 punch at wide receiver with McLaurin and now Curtis Samuel.
I do like Terry McLaurin. He's a very good route runner. He's a little bit like an Antonio Brown in his prime.
I just think there's a lot to like.
Yeah, that's true.
About this team, and that's not even assuming that they play in the NFC East, which they actually do. So,
which we can get to. Let's take a look at the schedule. Let's see where it really, because obviously this is a big. If there's one big signal that I think it's kind of glossed over by a lot of teams when you're looking at like futures predictions, is literally the schedule. The schedule can dictate a lot. So.
Yes, and that's where the tough part comes in here.
Yeah. So they started the season playing the Chargers, Giants, Bills, Falcons, Saints. So first 5 games, probably 2-3, 3-2. It's probably what we're looking at there. It's gonna be tough sledding.
I can see 3-2.
I could, and if they perform well, like to your point, Brett, like sure they could go 4-1. Then it gets really tough. They play Chiefs, Packers, Broncos, Bucks. And they play the Bucks right after their bye. But that could be 4 losses. And because the teams that they could beat, like the Broncos, like match up very well style-wise. So it's just gonna be a tough game. But once we get past that, so after their bye, they play the Bucks. Then things get a little easier. They play the Panthers, Seahawks, Raiders, Cowboys, Eagles, Giants. So once again, NFC East is backloaded with all the teams from the division. Teams like the NFL did that on purpose for some reason. I'm curious.
Yeah, the last 5 games of the season, division opponents.
And they play Cowboys with, back between Eagles and then Eagles, between Cowboys.
Yeah, that's very, very bizarre.
But they did this to the whole NFC East, and it's a very strange phenomenon.
And also for those who can't see the screen, again, Vegas estimated wins for Washington in 2021 is at 8 wins, and the estimated strength of schedule is 6th. Super Bowl odds plus 5,000. And so this schedule is definitely the curveball. It's the wrinkle in the bullish narrative for Washington. For sure. But I still like over 8 wins. I like playoffs, yes, at plus 160-ish.
Real quick, I don't think you even... Now, I think Washington's most likely to navigate a tough schedule early compared to the other teams. But if they don't, and let's say they're sitting at 4-5 and they're in second place with Dallas, who, whatever. I think you can get a better playoff line at some point in the
Probably.
season. So I especially as the schedule is so tough on the front half. So I don't think there's any point in betting this other if you want to do the wins over. I think that could make sense anticipating the back end of the season. But as far as playoffs go, might as well wait. I mean, if Cowboys start hot, I think they have a little bit of a softer schedule the first half of the season. Maybe they have a 2-game lead in the division. Then you start buying the Washington playoff odds at maybe plus 220, something in that range. Yeah, that's kind of my schedule takeaway on that. It's gonna be tough, man. That opening schedule, man. Like they could be. This is actually a great.
I mean, they're favored in 4 out of 5. So,
but this is a great spot for seeing if this team can go, let's say 4-5 to start the season, anticipating that. Well, that's because they had a tough schedule, but the market's gonna fade them now because they haven't lived up to the hype. Let's say, so that back half you could get a lot of potential value when the market kind of leaves Washington thinking they're not as good because they played a tough schedule.
For sure. Definitely always hard to kind of play the back and forth of trying to market time, that type of stuff. Especially, I mean, it's assuming that the market doesn't recognize that the second half, the back half of the season is much easier.
I don't think they do. I honestly don't think most people spend more than 2 minutes looking at the whole schedule for each team once. I don't think they do.
But I think again, you got one of the best defensive lines in football. The secondary is also pretty strong. Kendall Fuller. They signed William Jackson, the Bengals. Cam Curl, who was a rookie last year, really outperformed expectations, being a 7th round draft pick. He played awesome. Landon Collins was hurt a lot, underperformed, but he'll be back if he can kind of reemerge as and kind of perform in line with previous kind of performances from him. That would be a big boost. They improved the linebacking core, with their first round pick, Jamin Davis, who I've been reading just a lot of positive things about him, and that the coaching staff is really hyped. Brings a lot of athleticism and speed to the middle of the field there. And then, of course, the defensive line is just stacked. Easily the best defensive line in football. So I don't see really any regression happening from the defensive line. And it seems like the defense, in fact, only got better over the offseason, at least on paper. So it's going to be, I just think there's a lot to like here. Of course, again, it's the NFL, it's football. Things can change, injuries can happen, things of that sort. COVID can, cause havoc. So many different variables. But just when we're evaluating these teams as is on these kind of season previews, I feel like Washington is positioned most attractively moving forward into 21 to go over their win total, to win the division, make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm surprised actually that this Vegas estimated wins is not 9. So just from a capping perspective, I think
Cowboys 9.5.
Yeah, the number in Washington is definitely short. So just that in itself, I think you have some positive expected value.
Again, everyone is excited about the Cowboys in this division. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about Washington, because I feel like they're like flying a little bit under the radar.
Yeah, that might be good. I mean, honestly, from strictly a handicapping standpoint, because we do this to other people we listen to, is, I think you shed a lot of light on my feelings that I can't really describe why they're there, as to why they may not make sense, and actually giving me more granular points to kind of potentially flip my perspective, and not go on based on how I feel on a gut feeling, and do more so based on, well, what's the argument? What are the points that back up your feeling?
And I think one of the biggest takeaways is the fact that this team still won 7 games, even though Dwayne Haskins started 6 or 7 of the games over the course of the season. The fact that and lost all of them, I think except for one.
Well, they probably should have won that Giants game that they came back and went for 2. I mean, that,
Well, and that's when Kyle Allen was playing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and against, I mean, ATS, like, they're big underdogs against, like, the top tier teams in the NFL.
Yep.
But then they have
and short favorites against mediocre teams. Short favorite versus the Panthers. Short favorite versus the Raiders. Short favorite versus the Seahawks. Short favorite versus the Eagles. Short favorite versus the Giants. Short favorite versus the Falcons and the Saints. Like, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to bet Washington this season.
Yeah.
Especially because, as we saw when we were previewing the Cowboys, like, the market is just so out of whack when betting the Cowboys that I don't think that there's ever going to be like really a strong sentiment shift in who's going to win that division. The Cowboys could be 0-4, and people are still going to keep, over evaluating the Cowboys.
Good point. Whereas, like we said, we saw with Washington, it seems like it doesn't matter what Washington does. The market's never going to get too high and stay too high on Washington.
Yep, exactly.
At least last year.
All right, good stuff. So I think that wraps up today's episode previewing the Washington football team for 2021. So be sure to like and subscribe. Check out SportfolioKings platform at sportfoliokings.com. We're going to be releasing a bunch of really cool tools, market insights, market-oriented research, type of stuff that you're not seeing at the action networks, at the PFFs, at the VSiNs of the world. We're going to be really providing and originating some really unique sort of things out there to help you, again, be a better, to make better decision-making over the course of the 2021 betting season. So like we opened up with, this ain't your daddy's sports betting. So we're going to help you get out there, and really take your bookie to the woodshed.
Of course, as always, King me.